Witchers, welcome back to the Witcher Lorecast. This is your host Tom, or Robots. I'm here with Toasty, my favorite, most knowledgeable Witcher fan. There you go. That was complimentary. That one wasn't even backhanded. How do you feel about that?
Worried.
Worried? Like I'm planning something?
Yes.
So hi Toasty. We're back. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about I don't know if it's everyone's favorite druid. Probably not, but we're talking about Mousesack.
Mousesack. The man with the most unfortunate name in the Witcher universe. If I just keep talking with this tone, does it sound like I'm up to something?
Yes.
Cool. Good to know. Mousesack shows up in the show. He gets a lot of screen time in the first two seasons, and I feel like the actor does a good job with him. But every time anybody says his name, I'm just like, oh, that's a weird one. Why that name? I don't know. But we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about his life, some of the history, and some of the details that you may not have already known yet. So where do we start off, Toasty?
Mousesack. I don't know why I keep seeing this, and it seems like I think I misspelled it on every other outline that I mentioned him in. So now I'm just looking at it right now, and it's throwing me off. But Mousesack, also known as Ermion, was a skilled and intelligent druid, and was also a good friend and advisor to King Bran Tursock, I think. I'm trying to remember how they pronounced it exactly, but
Tursic. Names are hard. Also, speaking of names, he has another name, Ermion. We could just call him that instead of Mousesack.
We could, but then no one would know who we're talking about. Unfortunately,
that's true.
Because they don't forget this name. Advisor to King Bran Tursock of Skellige, as well as, of course, Queen Calanthe of Sintra, but we see most of him for that. Mm-hmm. But starting with his early life. So his early life is something that was not expanded upon in comic form, or was expanded upon in comic form.
Only in comic form, right?
Only in comic form. So the next part is not canonical technically, but we're going to talk about the different all the different aspects of the Witcher universe in this episode anyways. Right. So but just so you know,
like we normally do
to the books.
Right.
So Mousesack was the son of an unknown man from Skellige and Manissa, a witch in the service of Fregenal, who was killed in self-defense by Corin, the future father of Geralt.
What? Wait, whoa. What kind of soap opera is this? First of all, who is Fregenal? And wait, Geralt's father?
Killed Mousesack's mother.
What? Oh, weird. I don't know if I like this alternate canon comic universe.
I think it's kind of interesting. Mousesack's father left Manissa when he was a small child. Not knowing that the warrior killed his mother, the young Mousesack befriended Corin and the druid Vicenna.
Okay, so Corin, Geralt's future father,
yes,
kills his mom and then becomes best buds with Mousesack.
Yeah. But do you not recognize the name Vicenna?
I'm not so worried about Vicenna. I'm just this Corin guy. Corin, this is weird. This future father of Geralt, now best buds with...
He's best friends with both of Geralt's parents. Vicenna is Geralt's mom.
That's so weird. But Corin's the one that killed his mom. This is weird. I don't know how I feel about this.
And they both took him to the Druid Circle of Maena. Even though the Maena Circle was destroyed due to the plots of mages and kings, Mousesack and the two older druids were invited by the king to a Witcher tournament, which was to take place in a special arena. When the tournament turned into a massacre of Witchers of the Wolf School, Mousesack helped Geralt escape. His childhood friend.
This is that scene.
This is that scene. This is obviously kind of, it's like a middle ground young Geralt here. Back whenever, I can't remember exactly when that comic took place. He wasn't like the Geralt we know now, so but he's still kind of younger. Helped him get out of there.
Nice. Still weird. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the comic material that is presented, kind of just showing like just a bit of like earlier lore about him. And
I feel like, sorry to jump in, I feel like this is the kind of thing that happens in like video games or comics when they're like, we gotta draw parallels and connections to things people already know so that they care about the character. And it just ends up being like, I don't know, way too convenient. Like, of all the people in the world, it was Geralt's parents, like a little weird. Yeah.
So another little bit of, I guess, pre-storyline that we know information is that he did oppose the arguments of Eltebald and Stregobor during a council of wizards in which he took part when they argued to consider the children born in the year of the Black Sun monsters. So this he was there for that like grand meeting to which they came to this decision. Get the fucking bot out of here.
Yeah, we're getting bots. Speaking of things that would need to be burned from existence, not just Black Sun monsters and all that stuff. Okay, so this is an interesting point here. This idea that like he was a druid, but yet he was still at the Council of the Wizards. In the Witcher universe, and maybe you can shed some light on this that I'm not so fully, I don't fully understand. Is a druid a type of wizard? Is it like more of like a nature wizard? So therefore is included like when we see these scenes of like all these different wizards and sorceresses and whoever, right? Like obviously some of them can have magical control over like plant growth or, all sorts of different kinds of things. Water.
I think generally, and they probably do flex their like their kind of ideas because I think they are just a bit more not as like traditional wizard type as like a lot of the mages we see with like Stregobor and whatnot, where they kind of stick to a certain area of like magical schools and getting that information there. But right. So they definitely have like a different approach to their magic, but I do think mostly that it's just the cultural idea of Skellige, of where like their magic wielders are like, because we only really see druids in Skellige.
Okay, so that's like their flavor, so like
their of mage. Because of course Mousesack is from Skellige and ends up coming and being advisor to Calanthe later, but he is originally from there. So I think that's just kind of the idea, is that because, they have all the druid circles in Skellige and whatnot, and we don't really see them
right
on like mainland continent.
Okay. Well, that clears it up. Thanks for answering that. Okay. So was this scene with the wizards getting together talking about the Black Sun monsters, was this only in the comic still?
No, this is just a little bit of like information we know from, I guess,
his background from the books.
Yeah, his background was probably just a line thrown out there. I'm trying to remember specifically, but it's like, as we know, the books are a little wordy sometimes with the dialogue, so it was probably like kind of thrown out there at some point. Probably not even by him. It was probably just thrown out at some point. Maybe Geralt was like, "Oh yeah, my friend Mousesack was on. Talked about." I don't know.
Right. Right.
But like we do know this from his background from the books. What little we do know.
Right. So next we move forward in time to events that absolutely happened in the books and we've seen in the show. Specifically, right. With Calanthe and the dinner and all that. So how does that play out?
So I think they don't really tell us as like they make a much more finer point of it in the books. But Mousesack was present at the feast organized by Calanthe to celebrate Pavetta's coming of age. So like the same scene we see, or episode, not scene, the episode we see in the show at like the dinner party. Right. He was accompanying iced Mousesack and Croc on Crate as part of the delegation from Skellige. He communicated secretly with Geralt by manipulating breadcrumbs on their plates to form runes.
I like that. This part's cool.
So they were like kind of like passing messages under the table,
right? Except over the table and on their plates, but only they were the ones that only ones that noticed. I mean, you would never think to look on somebody's plate to see if somebody's arranging the breadcrumbs in a certain, like, to say a message or something. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Pretty much. Both men felt the impending trouble of that evening. Of course, Dooney's return and Pavetta's power being unleashed, though neither knew the exact details beforehand. So they both were kind of like, okay, something funky's going on here. We both realize, so, like, be on your guard kind of thing. Mm-hmm. When everyone at the interrupted feast finally arrived at accepting Dooney's claim, thanks to Geralt and Mousesack's intervention in the heated argument and letting Pavetta decide whether she would fulfill it, Mousesack warned Geralt of the grave danger he felt mounting in the room through breadcrumbs again. When Pavetta's power was uncontrollably unleashed by seeing Dooney being injured by Rainfarn, Mousesack and Geralt used their magical powers to try and put a stop to the rapidly escalating destruction.
Right. And this is another one of those things that we absolutely see in the TV show where everything goes crazy and, like, there's that big sort of explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they both, we definitely get, like, they kind of handle it pretty quickly in the show. I think it does kind of draw out a bit longer in the book. Where they're kind of like I think they're formulating a plan under a table. Like
right. Taking cover. Right. Yeah.
And they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So when everything had settled again in the early morning, Geralt and Mousesack did not draw attention to the fact that despite the sun having risen, Dooney had not yet transformed back, instead waiting to see when he'd notice it himself and amicably laughing when he did. Following Ice Mousesack's marriage with Calanthe, Mousesack stayed in Sintra to heal the injured and see to it that Pavetta learned to control her power. Often accompanying Pavetta's newborn daughter, Cirilla, he gained the young princess's familiar endearment.
So this is where we see the fact that, like, he's, at least in the show, he's always associated with Calanthe and then her family, and that connection he has with Ciri, where he's kind of parenting her in a sort of way without being a parent.
He's kind of like she's like a mentor to her.
Yeah.
He's like teaches her things and whatnot, and including he even like teaches her like all like the political things that she needs to learn for being like a princess. Right. Because we see him like constantly getting on to her for like, right, doing things improper.
Right. And we see that obviously her mother and father are busy, or stepfather are busy, and clearly having somebody like Mousesack there to advise on, well, this is the protocol, this is what you really should be doing, especially somebody as strong-willed as Ciri, I'm sure was very helpful in that situation.
Yeah. And especially like knowing probably like, Pavetta, this happened with Pavetta, and he's pretty much like probably like, I need to stick around because it probably is going to happen with Ciri too at some point.
Right.
So she needs to, I'll be here for when she needs to learn, kind of thing.
Right.
So,
right.
So moving on from that, we get to the story of Brokilon, which is pretty different from the show. Because the show does it like only Ciri, and then of course the little elf boy. In the original, Ciri is much younger. In the books, and Mousesack and Geralt are kind of involved in that one. Yeah, Geralt especially is involved in the whole thing. Mousesack shows up near the end, but yeah, there's definitely a bit more going on there. So
this is after Ciri leaves. Ciri runs away, right? And so, well,
it's like during because I believe she was to be married off to someone when she was younger. And she didn't like him. And so she like ran off away from them. And then Geralt, of course, stumbles upon her because, that their destinies are bound together.
Right.
So,
right.
But in 1263, Mousesack was searching Brooklyn Forest for Ciri when he came across her and Geralt, who were being attacked by mercenaries, and helped them defeat the men. Later, while the trio were resting under a tree, Mousesack informed Geralt that Calanthe had canceled Ciri's engagement to Prince Criston of Verdun, and that was the person she was to be married to. Mm-hmm. And upon their return to Cintra with Ciri, he would also encourage her to pick her own partner. Mousesack heard, yeah.
that sounds wonderful. Yeah. Getting to choose your own marriage, amazing. What a novel idea.
Mousesack urged Geralt to come with them to Cintra and take Ciri under his guidance, as the druid believed their fates were intertwined by the law of surprise, which of course we know that they are. Mm-hmm. Geralt, who did not believe in destiny and thought that one was only destined to die, declined the offer.
Yeah, so this is, even though this plays out differently in the show, there's definitely a scene where Mousesack and Geralt are debating the whole law of surprise and how strongly destiny actually works, or if it works at all. And we get the scene where Geralt's like, he doesn't believe any of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Mousesack reminisced the old prophecy, the sword of destiny has two edges. He explained that like a two-edged sword that can either serve its bearer or harm them, the destiny of Ciri and Geralt could be pure or sinister. He further explained that the bond between them could be pure, but only if Geralt connects with her as a guardian, or it could manifest itself differently in a negative or destructive way if he abandoned her.
Yeah, this is one of those points that in every story you have foreshadowing, all of that, right? But this is one of those really great points that conveys the severity and importance of what's happening with Ciri in a way that, like, puts you on edge. You know, you're like, oh, okay, if this is true, then either this is going to go terribly or it's going to go well. It just depends on what Geralt decides to do here. And Geralt is not one who believes in destiny. So how is this going to shake out? It's one of those moments.
Yeah. And of course, as we're all probably aware, he ignores the persuasions of Mousesack, got on his horse and rode away.
There he goes. So, bye, Geralt. See you later.
Yep. But of course, as part of their whole link is that it's going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
He's going to keep running into her in the oddest circumstances.
Right. Which eventually starts to kind of, convince him of something. But what's interesting here is in the books, he's convinced of the destiny of death. And I don't feel like that is as far forward of theme or an idea that comes across in the show. Mm-hmm. This idea that, like, he's not 100% against destiny. He just only believes that your death is destined. The way, like, not the events of your life, just how you end up, how you go out of this world. That's your destiny.
They don't really, and one of the unfortunate things, because I do think it's a very interesting, like, concept in the books that they just don't ever talk about, is just, the entire, like, they don't talk about really the entire idea of destiny. Like, there's the few little parts, but, like, I mean, they don't really bring up the importance of this stuff. I mean, in the original, dinner party story in the book, Geralt, like, in the show, they just make it kind of a joke where he's like, like, I don't really want anything, so I'll just, invoke the law of surprise because, it's bullshit anyways.
Because whatever, I don't want you to pay anything. So
and then it's like, right. It ends up being like legit. She's pregnant with a child, and he's like, oh fuck. But like in the books, he makes a very fine point of like, are you sure you want to ask me? Like, are you sure you want to offer me that? Because in a circumstance like this, there's only one thing I can really ask for, because it's very important and very crucial, especially to, like, witchers in general. Mm-hmm. And like, he asks Dooney like 3 times, like, are you certain you are willing to offer anything, and then invokes the law of surprise. And it's a very like important and like dramatic moment of, you know, the importance of the law of surprise. And like in the show, they just make a joke about it until it's like, you know, oh no, this is actually important. It has weight. There's weight to it.
Yeah. So it's one of those changes. I think, I don't know. We see this in the moving of books to movies and TV shows all the time, where these kinds of things are tweaked. And I think they do it for a like, well, the audience isn't going to believe it the real way, the way it is in the books. So we have to make like Geralt is kind of flippant and he doesn't believe in it. So let's just make it a joke, because that's just easier, you know, rather than like the way you described. Mm-hmm. You know, or like another example would be like in the Lord of the Rings films, the character Aragorn in the books is 100% sure of his destiny and is heading right towards it. He's very proud of who he is and he thinks he's very capable. But in the movies, he's avoiding it and he's not sure of himself. They're like, why flip it? Because the audience isn't going to believe a character who actually like is sure of himself, you know, like.
Yeah.
What? Why? You know, like, but for some reason, there's this like difference in the way that the directors or the writers of the movies or shows see culture and the way our culture will respond to things. And they feel like if we do it the way the book says, it's out of touch with culture today. So let's just not do it like that.
Or something. People like to see the struggling protagonist that's like unsure of themselves and doesn't like want the goal that they're destined for, but will eventually grow into it and, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the similarity between those two things, is that idea of like who you're destined to be. And Geralt treats it like a joke. Aragorn in that example treats it like something that he's trying to avoid, you know, when in actuality, they both, you know, are a little bit more sure about the way things actually work.
Yeah. And of course, this is all part of like, I think the dramatics of like, because of course he does believe in it there, but then like later on he doesn't believe in it. And I think because it's also part of like the dynamic between him and Yennefer with like, you know, because of his relationship with Yennefer, and he believes that they're destined, but then it's so like painful because they clash so much and have so much strife that he doesn't want to anymore. Right. He's kind of like sick of it at this point.
Right. So. Yeah. Yeah. And Rob notes conflict is more interesting in chat. I suppose the writers take that and apply it with even more conflict to that story as much as they can. It might be, but I could also see how there could be conflict around a character feeling too sure of themselves. You know, like you can draw conflict in both directions. Like,
or I mean, people love to see the, you know, like the character that's like does believe in something, but then ends up having reasons to struggle with that belief later.
Right. Right.
You know, why not? That's something people love. People love seeing people like characters who struggle with what they thought was right or they thought was true, and then starting to question it. You know, like, so they could have gone that way because he definitely does.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Could have gone either way. True. All right. Well, after the break, we're going to get to the events that happen after these things. So we're going to basically continue the timeline and then get into a little bit from The Witcher 3. So don't go anywhere. We've got some patrons to thank.
Very well. Let us get this over with. Something has infested my vineyard.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let me go prepare my something oil then.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show where we get to thank our patrons, and big shout out to all of our patrons, everybody who helps support us. We don't have any new ones this week, but we do have 14 current patrons and 2 higher vampires, Jared M. and Ben of Temeria, who get shout outs every week. So thank you all for your support. We really do appreciate it. And we do have a new review as well. Before we get to the reviews, if you want to check out all the different stuff you can get, ad-free episodes early, new t-shirts, which will be rolling out, I think, next week. I'll have to double check the time, but it's sometime in the middle of this month. Got some new, about right. Yeah, I got some new t-shirts. Toasty and I have been designing, and we did like the whole monster thing with like the letter with the description of the monster to go hunt. These new ones are a little bit different, a little bit more stylish, and I think you guys will like them. So all that stuff's going to be up on the Patreon, patreon.com/Witcher Lorecast. We also have a new review. This one comes from Raglan of Povis from Great Britain. Toasty's nodding his head. All right, cool, good name. This one says, a great dive into the lore of The Witcher, 5 stars. Hi, fellow Witchers. Discovered this a few weeks ago and have been hooked ever since. The chemistry between you all is great. We've got great chemistry, Toasty. And I love getting a better understanding of the wider lore in The Witcher. Toasty's got a funny grin on his face. Keep doing what you're doing and stay safe on the path. Yours, Raglan of Povis.
Look, Raglan, I appreciate your review. It means a lot. Of course, appreciate all the reviews. All the people that listen. Just a bit of advice, buddy. You should probably work on your perception of people, because it's obviously wrong. If you think we have great chemistry, you're mistaken. You're mistaken.
Maybe it's like
mistaken.
Maybe it's like Destiny. Maybe we do have great chemistry. You just haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, you know what? Geralt and Yennefer were destined too, and their chemistry's all out of whack. So,
hey, there you go. There you go.
You don't have to have good chemistry for Destiny. All right.
All right. Raglan, thank you so much. And anyone who takes the time to leave a rating, especially a 5-star rating with a review, we'll read those out on a future episode of the show. And you can always drop us a rating on Spotify as well. There's like 400 and something of you guys who have done that. We really do appreciate it. And even if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, if you have an account, you can just log in and leave us another review, and we'll read out your words on a future episode of the show. So thank you to everybody for all of your support. Let's move on with the rest of this story about Mousesack. Here we go.
You smell of death and destiny, heroics and heartbreak.
It's onion.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Genesis in chat says antagonistic chemistry? Anti-chemistry?
See, Rockland, if you want to hear good chemistry, you should listen to the Cyberpunk Lorecast, because me and Jin have good chemistry.
That's just because she's more attractive than I am.
That has nothing to do with it.
Everybody has good chemistry with Genesis. Anyway, before we got that got more awkward than I intended. Anyway, let's talk about Sack of Mouse some more. Here we go.
Anyways, broke my brain.
All right, so
God.
What happens after these other events? Yeah. Whoa.
Mousesack eventually survived the slaughter of Sintra and fled. In 1272, he and Geralt met again, this time at Ard Skellig, where Mousesack, known here as Ermion, managed to become the Hierophant of the local circle of druids. It turned out that he did not want to let Yennefer go to the destroyed part of the forest, which she wanted to explore. He eventually allowed it only after consent from Krakon Crate, even though he was strongly upset by the sorceress because she, with the help of Geralt, stole the mask of Ouroboros from his laboratory. His anger reached its zenith when Yin used the mask. This rendered the mask useless and also created a huge storm. He calmed down a little, though, when he learned that it was necessary to find Ciri, but was still very angry.
This is a very specific series of events.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to say about it. I guess it does make sense that he was back at Ard Skellig, because that's where he came from. It is interesting that he uses a different name over there. Maybe that's his more natural name among his own people. I don't know that we know the answer to that.
I don't think I know the reason why he's Ermion here. Maybe it's like part of something of like, maybe
that's his last
druid
name.
Ritual or something.
That's his last name. That's what it is. He's Mousesack Ermion. Or maybe it's his first. Yeah, maybe it's his first name.
I feel like it'd be Ermion Mousesack. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, but that's even more unfortunate if that's like your family name.
Yes, I know what a zenith is, Rob. I just said it wrong, my guy.
Thanks, Rob. All right, so that's everything we know from the books. Other than that, he really doesn't show that much.
Yeah, because as we know, it's Geralt perspective. I mean, we see what we see.
These are the times that he runs in. He and Geralt kind of cross paths. All right, what about The Witcher 3?
So we have a journal entry, pretty sizable journal entry.
Should I read it
for him?
I love reading
Yes, go
journal
ahead.
entries. Should I do it in a funny voice? How does
I don't know. Do what you want.
who is it written by?
It's just a journal entry. They're not always written by by a person.
By whose perspective? All right, so I'll just
Yeah.
I'll just read it.
I'm assuming this is Geralt's journal,
Might be
kind of thing,
might be
or
Geralt.
whatever.
Most druids of Skellige. Oh my god, I would like tear my voice up to keep doing that. Differ from the deeply rooted continental stereotype of a gray-bearded old man in white robes, bowing before sacred oaks, taming wyverns. Wyverns? How did we decide we wanted to say that word? I don't remember. And pestering pestering local lords with petitions to add yet another species to the list of protected beasts. Ermion, Geralt's old acquaintance, was no exception in this regard. This stiff-bearded, spindly man was the leader of the Druid Circle in Skellige, which matches what we'd previously mentioned. He was also Jarl Krakenkrate's advisor on matters of magic and the mystical, as well as on any and all issues requiring more refinement than a well-timed uppercut or a hard-swung axe. That is a comment on Krakenkrate's willingness to hit things to fix them. Ermion was known to be obstinate and to have a tendency, quite rare in Skellige, to consider all possible consequences of a particular course of action before it was undertaken. All this meant that conversing with him demanded a considerable amount of time and patience. Given all this, one can hardly be surprised that Yennefer and Geralt's rash and highly irresponsible actions regarding the magic anomaly, stealing a priceless artifact from a private chamber, being first among them, put Ermion quite out of sorts. This is one of those like parallel things that happens in the games that harkens back to the things that happen in the books, I believe.
I think because that part was the game.
Right,
Right?
but
I
like
mean, I put this thing in the.
they did this in the game, right? Like they did a similar thing.
I think this is the game. Like, at that part, I believe you play through that.
Right.
Am I mistaken?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is you play through a situation very similar to what you described happened in the books, where Yennefer used the Ouroboros, and like basically Geralt and Yennefer do something rash, and he doesn't like it, and they use a magic artifact in a way that he doesn't like. It happens in the book, and then it also happens in the game, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm
trying to remember. I may have put this in the wrong. I'm trying to think.
Unless this is referencing back to the event of the book. But I think that does happen, and he gets upset about it. I'm pretty sure. However, I'm sure somebody's yelling at the radio. However, despite his difficult character and his... Well, they're listening on their like car sound system, which is still called a radio usually. Fair enough. And his somewhat testy relationship with Geralt, that would be gross. Ermion agreed at once to travel to Kaer Morhen and help defend Ciri from the Wild Hunt's forces. When persuasion and reason failed, Ermion would, as a last resort, turn to violence, and then he became a foe to be reckoned with. Madman Lugos, well, I think that's how you pronounce that, found this out personally when, in a fit of rage, she attacked Ermion and Geralt. As they had in the past, Witcher and Druid stood side by side and fought a common enemy. So, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. And of course, so there are several quests that Mousesack or Ermion, whichever you prefer, is involved with in the game. Some of which, of course, like this one that we just talked about, pursuing like the series path or whatever, of course, part of the main quest line, as well as there's, he's involved heavily with the ones that are having to do with deciding the succession in Skellige. But of course, most importantly, he has a Gwent quest.
Most importantly,
of course, the most notable,
because everybody just plays Gwent most of the time.
It's Gwent with like a side story, right? That's what The Witcher 3 is.
Yeah, it's a card game with RPG elements.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So
we like, all we have left here is what happens in the show, right? And we've noted a lot of the similarities and differences already. Is there anything else that we haven't gone over?
Right. So talked about the dinner party, of course, mostly everything the same. Talked about the differences of the story of Brokilon, although it happens in a weird way. Specifically because of this main difference, which is that it looks like Mousesack did not survive the sacking of Sintra like he did in the books and games. After being captured by the Nilfgaardians, Mousesack is brought before Kair, who has enlisted the help of a Doppler to recover Princess Ciri from Brokilon Forest.
Right. And this never happens in the books.
No.
There's no Doppler. There's none of this being captured.
I mean, there's a Doppler in the books.
Well, there's a Doppler, but
not at all.
Not in this situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Kair orders the Doppler to take on Mousesack's appearance, who then releases Mousesack from his chains, and the Doppler tackles him to the ground, shapeshifts into him, and then stabs Mousesack with a knife. And then takes on the guise of Mousesack to pursue Ciri, who he does find in Brokilon Forest, but it is the Doppler and not the real one who finds them. And of course, they have that whole struggle because Ciri picks up on it, finds out that it's not the real Mousesack, even though I pretty sure Dopplers are supposed to take on the memories of the person that they shapeshift into as well. But we won't talk about that.
There's some TV show stuff going on here, but yeah,
I think that maybe the idea is that he got careless because he was tired of answering the questions or something and slipped. I don't know.
Right.
But she figures it out. He gets revealed as a Doppler and she runs off. And this is how she kind of ends up getting separated on her own for longer.
Right.
But that is the big difference between Netflix show and canon content. So
yeah. And the biggest part about this is that he's no longer alive. So whatever they do in the rest of the Netflix series over the next few seasons, he's not going to be, at least in the current timeline as it moves forward. Maybe flashbacks again, but nothing else moving forward. Whereas in the books, he's still around.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because obviously he can't become Hierophant of a group of druids if he's the Doppler. If the Doppler can't do that because they don't have magic per se.
Yeah. And the Doppler's not going to want to maintain that personality for forever.
Yeah.
I would assume.
And I'm wondering how they're going to be, because I'm fairly certain that Doppler is Dudu. Because they Kair gives him a scar right in the same place, the same placement of the scar. So assuming it's supposed to be Dudu, I'm wondering how that's going to play out, considering that the Dudu that we know never killed one of Geralt's childhood friends. Dudu's going to be a bad guy, or if Geralt's want to kill him, or what, or if he just never tells him. I don't know.
Yeah, in my world, Dudu is a necessary evil. Once a day or so. So that's it. That's all we have about Mousesack. Mousesack. Toasty just stopped moving. He's just turned to stone. I just cast a spell on him and now he's not moving anymore. So that's it for him. We should do a Dudu episode, speaking of Dudu. But instead of that, for next week, because we've got Valentine's Day coming up, Toasty, where are we going next?
Have a very special bestiary episode for you next week that you will find out about.
We're not going to tell them.
No, we're not going to tell them.
All right, you just have to tune in.
They'll see.
You have to tune in, find out how love moves us in the future. So, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Toasty, you got anything else going on you want to share before we head out?
Like I mentioned prior, I do the Cyberpunk Lorecast with Genesis. If you're into cyberpunk or the games, the tabletop, whatever, and I also do the Cyberpunk Red Actual Play podcast, Cyberpunk 'D, with the Fumbling 4 and Almighty Crit Gang.
There you go. Go check that stuff out. You can find it on whatever podcatcher you're listening to this on, or robotsradio.net for links. And you can find all my other shows and my stuff I've got going on, all sorts of fun stuff. But just come join us on the Discord. Come chat. Let us know your thoughts about the games and the books and the TV show and all that stuff. And until next time,
stay safe on the path.
We'll see you then for our special Valentine's episode. See you later, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Witcher Lorecast. We'd love to hear about your experiences with the games and the books and the TV series and all your thoughts on everything. Please check out the Robots Radio Discord and follow us on Twitter at Witcher Lorecast.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.